In the last occasion, we have been discussing about the Sabbasava Sutta. 7 techniques in Sabbasava Sutta are real powerful techniques, but out of them, 3 we have discussed in the last occasion. But it's important to go through them very briefly because our purpose of going through this Sabbasava Sutta has 2 main functions. One of them is the Darsana Pahatabba that will lead to attainment of Sotapanna stage. The other one, they will also provide us relief in stress management in day-to-day life. So, as we have discussed in the last occasion, Dasana Pahatabba is not mentioned in the Asava Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya. There is no doubt Dasana Pahatabba leads to attainment of Sotapanna because 3 fetters, Sakkaya Ditthi Vichikicha Silapata Paramasa, will vanish with it. But we have to remember, this will happen in once in all samsara. Therefore, Dasana Pahatabba cannot be repeated from time to time. When it happens, the person will attain the first stage of liberation and enter the noble path. However, it is also important to note that Dasana Pahatabba will require Yoniso manasikara practice and preventing from Ayoniso manasikara technique. Yoniso manasikara is a very valuable act that has to be performed to attain Sotapanna stage. As we have discussed earlier also, this manasikara in the Buddhism has been used for 2 different type of activities. When we recall what is in our memory to analyze or to use, discuss, etc., that is recommended by Buddhism is generally spoken as manasikara. Although it has not been clearly mentioned, there is a good reason to believe this type of manasikara comes under Ayoniso manasikara. Because the other definition, other interpretation of the manasikara is the Sabbe Dhamma manasikara-Sambhava. We know Yoniso manasikara is the activity that has to be done at the time of the origin of manasikara. So when we say Sabbe Dhamma manasikara-Sambhava, we move towards the origin of manasikara. Therefore, recalling whatever the memories we have in the mind cannot be Yoniso manasikara. As the word manasikara has been used in two locations, two places in two different meanings. Ayonisi manasikara is Ayoniso manasikara is the normal function of recalling memories. And what we do at the time of normal thinking. In fact, it's clear according to Sabbasava Sutta because it describes a person who is doing Ayonisi manasikara will lead to various non-Buddhist theories mentioned in the Brahmajala Sutta. Once we have identified manasikara, two components of manasikara, Yoniso manasikara and Ayoniso manasikara, I think the relationship between the Sabbasava Sutta and the Mula paryaaya Sutta becomes very clear. Because Mula paryaaya Sutta very clearly says any concept which you have learned, sanya, is not representing the 24 factors that a Sovan person will achieve. So it's clear, all the things which he learned, even by direct discourse, hearing a discourse directly given by the Buddha, falls under manasikara, but those things cannot be considered as Yoniso manasikara. As Buddha himself has said, that one should not take anything because they have heard it from Buddha. You have to look at inside and find it through Yoniso manasikara, according to the our Sabbasava Sutta. So these two suttas techniques are having very strong common background. After identifying that, I think we can address the other six techniques that has been described by Buddha. As we have discussed in the last occasion, Samvara Pahatabba is a practice that is taught in Samanapala Sutta as a sila. Idea of practicing Samvara Sila, Indriya Samvara Sila, in the Samanapala Sutta is directed at not forming symbols at the time of taking inputs. But actually, description given in Sabbasava Sutta seems to be little more deep, although the same concepts are being provided in the sutta. As we have discussed earlier, karma will not arise only because of activating sense doors. Nirmana Rati and Paranimita Vasavarti goats get their satisfaction of calm nature by doing actions and holding to the matter that does not belong to them. Paranirmita goats will hold only. Paranirmita Vasavarti, meaning, is also related to this part. And Nirmanarati is the activity that is being done by doing actions, which you have discussed earlier. Then we have the Pativesana Pahatama. In general, this sutta is meant for monks. We know the four types of things monks are supposed to consume are taking food, drinks, which has been mentioned as the Gilana Pratya, and Chivara, the robes, and the Senasana, the places they live. Actually, these four factors will represent the needs of the every human being, not only monks. Of course, we have created many more needs other than that, but these four are essential for even monks, according to Buddhist practice. Going beyond the Nigatanatha Buddha, who had said clothes are not required. Actually, these four practices comprise of two groups. Eating and drinking comes under one category, and Senasana and Gilana Pratya comes under the second category. When we take food or drink, actually, what will happen? When we consume food or drink, those outside entities will become part of our body after that. But Chivara and Senasana, it will not happen. They will remain outside. So that is the main difference between these two groups. Actually, we have to be clear. These functions are not related to enjoying the tactile sensation or the taste. Those comes under Indriya Samvara Sila. I think we have to identify the difference between the two. So these are basically the activities and holdings which are essential. So when priests chant certain Pali statements before taking meal or doing other activities, that will remind them basically what is the purpose of eating, which will prevent the excessive attachment to taste and so on. So Patisevana Mahatabba has to take place not at the time of chanting, but at the time of eating or basically using the consumables which will require, consumptions which will require to continue our life. Adivesana pahatabba is meant to face the pain and direct interpretation. But actually, asava is not supposed to, removing asava does not mean removing of pain. It is meant to create a situation where the chances of sins occurring is minimized or eliminated. Therefore, when we practice asava pahatabba, when the related to our painful events, it does not mean that the pain will go away. Of course, it will reduce because when you are not consciously growing pain by addressing it, there will be a reduction on it. But actually, reaction to pain, creation of our bad karma is the fact that which we have to address. Then we have another important technique, avoiding. I think the word is parivesana pahatapa. What comes to our mind is avoid wild elephants or troublesome places. Actually, it's useful, but the main purpose of such examples is given at a later place in the practice, description of the practice. Avoid bad companionship, which does not get highlighted in general. When you associate with people who are encouraging bad activities, that can be more serious than the facing an wild elephant. Actually, asava overcoming techniques are addressing the not creating sins. Therefore, we have to be careful to understand the deep meaning of parivesana hatappa. We should eliminate facing elephants as well, wild elephants, because that can create us anger. Fear comes under anger. So it's important. But including asevanacha balanang in the same method has a very deep meaning. One of the other techniques which we are supposed to follow is doing meditation. Of course, example given is related to Bojjhanga Bhavana. Actual Buddhist Bojjhanga Bhavana will appear only in the thought processes that will lead to Nibbana. Therefore, Bojjhanga here cannot mean that real deep Buddhist practice of Bojjhanga. But on the other hand, according to the stories, at the Buddha's time, there were some other religious groups claimed they practice Bojjhanga. Buddha did not dispute it, but what he told was they cannot achieve the results of the Buddhist practice of Bojjhanga. Therefore, depending on the person's background, Bojjhanga can be used the, for the activities that the other groups thought which are Bojjhanga as well. So meditation, the broad meaning of meditation is to prevent a situation of creating bad karma by taking a step that is associated with good karma, which we have discussed earlier. So you use good karma as the base, then the chances of occurring bad karma will reduce. Other technique is applicable after arising the bad karma or actually bad asava. Once it arises, then we have to take step to eliminate it. Actually, this step is to be done by applying energy. You have to have the previous preparation. Therefore, normal sila practice comes under here. After thoughts arises with regard to lobha, dosa, moha, we have to eliminate them in the sila practice. Samma vacha, samma kammanta, and samma ajiva, three basically the steps in our Noble Eightfold Path address this, which we have discussed in earlier occasions. But we have to remember there is an order with regard to this, as well as we have to be careful about applying it at the correct time. Because after arising the wrong thought, and when it gets into practice, you cannot apply some of the techniques that which you have learned. I think we'll stop there. Basically speaking, we may have to continue with the discussion as and when requires, because these are very powerful techniques which all of us should learn, that will give us relief in general, reducing the stresses, but on the other hand, actual benefit comes from the more useful benefit will come from the eliminating of asava. We'll stop there.